Hey guys, this is chapter 9, cell communication. It's a rather in-depth chapter. I encourage you to do your reading in the book because you'll kind of miss out on some things here without some supplemental support. The first thing is a little bit of overview of cell communication. Some key terms here that I've identified. Ligand. And a ligand is a signaling molecule. This could be a number of things. We'll talk about several different types of ligands as we go through this. A receptor protein is the molecule to which the ligand binds, and then that causes a signal transduction, which is converting that information into a cellular response. And this is actually then what causes the cell to do whatever it is it's supposed to do, depending on what the signal is that's been sent. And we've got a little bit of a drawing, an overview of that. You can have both hydrophilic and hydrophobic ligands. The hydrophilic ones can't get through the cell membrane, so they have a receptor protein on the surface of the cell membrane. And then once those bind, that causes a signal transduction pathway that eventually leads to the cellular response. In a hydrophobic ligand, those can cross the cell membranes. Those bind to a receptor protein inside of the cell, and then that causes the signal transduction pathway, which causes the cellular response. There are 4 types of cell signaling, and we'll go into detail on different types of these along the way. The first and easiest is direct contact, and most of the time this is gap junctions between 2 cells, that a signal from one cell is being sent directly into the other cell. And this is through some kind of opening, usually in the cell membrane. So the target cell would be on this side, signal goes straight through, very simple type. Over here we've got a paracrine signaling pathway. This one uses some type of secretory or secreting cell. It will secrete the ligand. There will be target cells that will pick up that ligand and then transfer a response. And this is seen in the immune response, for instance. In the endocrine signaling, you have the endocrine gland connected through a blood supply will send hormones to the target cells. So this is a pretty long distance transfer. This is very short. This is short as well, usually not too long. This can be from one end of the body to the other. So this could actually be a very long signal that's sent. And then we have the synaptic signaling. In synaptic signaling, you're looking at nerve cells. So the nerve cell will transmit a neurotransmitter across a synaptic gap, which is the synaptic signaling name. And it will be picked up by a target cell that will cause then a response here on this cell. When we're looking at proteins, receptor proteins, one of the things that really makes cell communication works is the ability to activate and deactivate a protein. To activate a protein, we use protein kinases. These are proteins that take a phosphate group from ATP and add it to a protein. So you're breaking that phosphate off and attaching it to another protein. There are only 3 different types of amino acids it can bind to, and we'll look a little in depth on the next lecture on those. And this will, in essence, what we call activate or turn on a protein. In other words, make it functioning. But we want to deactivate those proteins as well, because you don't want those just on all the time. Most responses are just for a limited time. So what we use is a phosphatase. Phosphatase is a protein that will come in and remove the phosphate from that protein, and in essence then deactivating it or turning it off. So that's the way that we use these proteins. When we're looking at the receptor types, the actual proteins that receive the signal, there are 3 types that are membrane receptors. In this first one here, we call it a channel-linked receptor. We have an ion channel. It's closed. Okay? Here comes the ligand in. There's ions out here saying we need through. So the ligand will bind. It will open the channel and then ions will diffuse into the target cell. Here is an enzymatic receptor. This goes along with the previous slide of activating and deactivating. So we have a protein that has an inactive protein here. Here comes the ligand, binds. This activates the protein down here. In essence, this would be a kinase then, because now it's activated, and that would cause some kind of cellular response in the cell. The last is called a G protein coupled receptor. I didn't have space to write that on here. That's a big name. The G protein coupled receptor uses this protein here bound to a beta gamma alpha protein that has what we call a GDP attached to it. This is guanine diphosphate, which is very similar to ATP, or in this case ADP. And this is going to just be an energy molecule that's going to help activate this protein. So here comes the ligand in. It can cause one of several responses. The two I've got on here would be a channel protein or an enzyme. So here the ligand binds to the G protein coupled receptor. Notice the alpha connected to the GDP, which is now a GTP because there was a kinase that activated that protein. That will be released, and that will bind to then either the channel protein here, opening that, or an enzyme over here activating that. So we can activate an enzyme or open a channel or various other things. The cell will use this G protein coupled receptor in various ways. We'll actually go into some detail on a couple of those later. The last one here is a receptor type, and in the receptor types we have an intracellular receptor. In the intracellular receptor, we're talking about hormones crossing the cell membrane. When hormones cross the cell membrane, because they can, they're hydrophobic, they will then bind to a protein over here. So here's your protein receptor. All right. Right now it's got an inhibitor attached to it, meaning it's turned off. So the hormone attaches to the protein, the inhibitor releases. This protein, in this case, goes into the nucleus, binds to the DNA, and causes a gene to be transcribed. In other words, turning on some kind of gene in the cell. And this could cause various then responses.